This is Thank You Mama, weekly lessons from mothers all around the world. Hello and welcome to Thank You Mama. My name is Anna Teider. My guest today is Deb Rubin. Deb is from Boulder, Colorado. She's a psychotherapist for over 20 years. She's also a licensed clinical social worker. And in her private practice, she includes parent coaching and group facilitation through the mother-daughter journey. And Deb will tell us more about this. And together with her fellow therapist, Kate Krupke, Deb hosts the Motherhood Uncut podcast, in which they tackle, in a very charming, unscripted, deep, informing, and really inspiring way, all different facets of motherhood. I was their guest in June 2023. I had a really amazing time talking to Deb and Kate, and I was very, very excited to invite them to join me on Thank You Mama. So here we are. Deb, hi and welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I am so sorry to hear. I just heard from you that you're recovering from COVID. And
Yep.
As you just said, aren't we over with this yet? Obviously not.
Oh my goodness, it
I'm
kind
so
of came in with a vengeance. Yes, thank you for your empathy. Yeah. It was a rough run, but I'm coming on the other side. But it's just such an interesting virus. It has so much kind of dark energy around it that I think it just continues to illuminate shadow work and curiosity for me, at least. It's fascinating.
I got it last year in summer when we arrived to my island, to the island where my mom and her family comes from, which I'm very, very deeply connected to. This is where I go to find my wild woman and connect to my roots. And it was an interesting experience because I didn't let it get to me. Like, it was bad. I had very high fever. I was feeling really, really bad for a few days. But the moment I felt better, I just went and jumped in the ocean. I'm like, I'm done with you, COVID.
Yes.
That helped.
That does help. I did the same thing, actually. I jumped in the creek.
Oh,
the
you
day
did too?
I started feeling a little better. Yeah. And I just did like a long cold plunge. And I was like, I just want to leave all this energy into Mother Earth and let it wash away. Like, I'm just ready for it to be out of me.
So we had a similar
I get you.
experience. Oh,
yes.
Terrible. Deb,
yes.
Tell me a little bit more about your work. And I'm very curious to learn how and why you started working with mothers and daughters.
Yeah. So my work started when a long time ago when I became a social worker. I was initially attracted to teens, and I was working with adolescents, and I was quite young myself, and I was really relating to adolescents and just wanting to support them. And it was a wonderful beginning practice. And then I got a job at the university, and I was working with college students simultaneously, loving that age group. And as I aged, my clientele aged with me. And a lot of that was circumstantial because I became a mother, and suddenly I wanted to work during the only working hours during the day. I didn't want to work in the evenings anymore. And so I started to put my energy towards adults only. And it was really what I fell in love with. And I got really interested in couples and sexuality and overall relationships. And I did that for 19 years. And somewhere along, and I was also working with individuals, but what kept me going was this huge passion I have for people's self-discovery and growth. I just love nothing more than helping people find their way back to their own intuition in order to build connection. And as time went on, I started thinking about other places that I value connection. And as I started to look at my own daughters and knowing what's to come with their adolescent journey and the messaging that we get from our culture, that when adolescents go through puberty and start to differentiate, that their relationships with their mothers become really horrific. We see that in the movies and books and just stories. And people kept saying to me, oh, just you wait, just you wait. I was not naive to the fact that adolescents go through a really kind of powerful transformation. They have to become separate beings. But I questioned, does it have to be so disconnected? And so I started to transfer all my work with couples onto the mother-daughter connection. And I started to run these workshops. And what I found over and over, and through tons of research, is that it doesn't have to be disconnected. It does have to look different. And we as mothers have to change our stance and start to really parent adolescent girls in a different way. But that's on us as adults to adjust how our style in order to keep our girls feeling safe and connected. And now I've been doing it for 7 years or so, and really putting the majority of my energy into it for the last 2 years. And it gives me so much joy to work with mothers and daughters. And really, a lot of times I focus just on the mothers because I want to equip mothers to know that they have everything they need to be able to hold their daughters through this threshold. And that's where I light up right now. So that was a long answer.
That was a beautiful answer. And I like it how it developed through the stages of human life. How it went from working with young people to romantic relationships, so to say, to parenting and grown-ups. Do you have any tips for our listeners who might have teenage daughters now? Is it possible to give quick tips with this complex topic?
It is. There's definitely some quick tips. Of course, these are not going to be nuanced, but I think the biggest theme I hear from adolescent girls is that they don't feel heard, and that so often mothers and fathers will quickly go into problem solving. Mm-hmm. And this is actually the same exact theme I would see in couples. I think one big tip is that at the end of the day, people want to feel heard and understood, because a theme is feeling misunderstood. And the reality is we do walk in the world alone and no one is in our head, and it can feel very isolating. And when someone feels heard and felt by someone else, it actually creates a pathway for confidence, for worthiness, for a sense of self. So I think my biggest tip is how to really listen and how to really validate someone else's emotional experience without having to agree with them. And this is actually a really big challenge for most of us humans, of how do I validate someone without agreeing with them? And it's a skill, and it takes practice, and it takes a big old pause, and it takes staying grounded and being embodied to be able to open your heart and your ears to someone else's experience so they don't feel alone in their experience. So yeah, one of my biggest tips is how to consciously listen.
You know, this is so helpful for me, and especially in my relationship with my husband, because
Yes.
I intuitionally, for many, many years, would always immediately try to solve things, and he would get very upset at that. And it took me many years of talking to intelligent, experienced professionals like you, you know, to especially through this podcast, to learn the importance of listening and just acknowledging others' emotions and experiences. And I'm practicing that now with Kai as well. And we just had this situation yesterday. We had dinner, and Kai's going on his first school trip in 2 weeks. And Nick asked him if he's nervous about this. And Kai said, yes, of course I'm nervous. This is the first time I'll be away from my parents for a few days. Yeah. And Nick immediately started solving the nervousness. And Kai really reacted very strongly against it and started defending himself and saying, yeah, but it's okay. You would also feel nervous. It's okay that I feel nervous. And I tried supporting him in this. And I was just thinking, as you were speaking, I have to talk to Nick about this again. It's such an important lesson in parenting to just listen and acknowledge. And it's okay. You're nervous. You're going away for the first time. it's okay to be nervous. It's not.
It's okay to
It's
be
not a
nervous.
negative experience. It's just an emotion.
That's right. That's exactly it. And we live in a culture that moves very fast.
Yeah.
Right? Like we have quick sound bites. We have quick fixes. The whole internet is filled with 10 ways to feel happy, you know, and it's everything is very fast. And I think it is really the heart of listening is to slow it all down.
Yeah.
And to actually think, I really want to learn what it's like for you right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of a mantra that can land of, I want to understand what that's like to be nervous. You know, it's like that's where we kind of can tap into curiosity. Mm-hmm. And when we're in a curious part of our brain, the kind of amygdala or rapid thinking or survival techniques can slow down. Mm-hmm. And those are the parts that go into problem solving. And let me be clear, kids actually want to problem solve as well. They want to learn strategies, for example, in your situation around how do I manage my nervousness? But that comes way later. And they can actually be influenced by your wisdom or your husband's wisdom in that situation once they feel a sense of being heard. So much of this is checking in with the cues that make you present, right? So that you can really take it all down a notch. And I love the idea of just slowing it all down. I can't tell you how many times in my house I will often just respond with like, that sucks, you know, or wow, that sounds like a really hard day. Tell me more, you know, and it's just like, exhale.
That revolutionized my relationship with my husband, really, since I stopped immediately thinking in answers and solutions, but just listening. Just and I'm still fighting the urge to have an answer, and I'm still sometimes I want to ask him, is it okay if I don't answer, if I'm just listening to you?
Yes. And what does he say?
I didn't yet. I didn't do that yet.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful question.
Deb, before we jump to Mama, how many daughters do you have? How old are they now?
I have two daughters. One's 13, one's 15 and a half.
But now we can really jump to Mama Lois. Can you tell me a little bit about her?
Yes. So my mom, Lois Barron, I mean, I feel really, really lucky to say that I won the mama jackpot. I had, what does my husband call it? I was like in the golden uterus or something, he says. So my mom is a really wise old soul. She is kind to the core. She's patient. She's human. She has a million quirks that she's working with, but she's not afraid to do the work. So I think one of the things I value the most about her is that she always wants to grow and learn and discover herself and kind of evolve in her human experience. So I can see that now as an adult. As a teen and as a kid, we went through so many trials and tribulations of trying to understand each other because we're very, very aligned. We're both cancers. We're both old souls. We're both kind of we both love to journal and talk about our feelings, which is a joke in our household because my sister and my father were not like that. But we're very different in that she values different things than me. Like she loves art and literature and fashion and I can appreciate all of that, but I'm more of an outdoorsy woman. I like adventure. I like high risk. I like being dirty and like in the dirt camping. Those are things that we never could really understand about each other. And so that was a journey for us of learning how to see our differences. And yeah, I could go on from there, but I'll stop. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about her story, about her life? I'm guessing she's American.
Yes.
How many children did she have? What's the story about becoming a mom and getting married? Did she work?
Yeah, great questions. So she grew up in New York. She's one of two daughters, both hardworking parents. Her dad was a World War II vet. She went to fashion design school in New York City. So she was always ahead of the curve. She was a writer and an artist. Then she got married and had two children. I have an older sister.
Mm-hmm.
She's 3.5 years older than me. And she became an early childhood person, and she became a teacher, a preschool teacher. And then she herself ran parent workshops. So I followed in her shoes a lot in that way. So yeah, she worked all through my life, and then late and never got a degree, a full bachelor's degree. And then when I went to school, she actually went back to school and got her bachelor's.
How old was she at that stage? She
She
must have been in
was-
her 30s, 40s?
No, because I think she was maybe 45.
Oh, great.
40, maybe 40. Yeah, she went back at that age.
Mm-hmm.
It was really amazing.
Wow.
And she loved it. She loved learning.
What did she learn there?
And I would say, yeah, she was studying human development, and she was really like focusing on menopause and how it kind of parallels adolescence.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that
That's
fascinating? And now
fascinating.
here I'm in that stage, and I was like, can I read your thesis? I mean, she loved it, but she also was just taking lots of classes. She was taking a watercolor painting class, and she was in like a literature class and psychology. She was just like a kid learning for like in that capacity for the first time. It was really cool.
That's fantastic. I love these stories of new beginnings and of, not being scared of aging, but seeing that it can open so many new doors if we're curious and if we're there.
Yes, it's really that, and not letting fear get in the way.
Yeah.
And she was actually inspired by my dad's mother, who went back to school for a social work degree in her 50s.
Amazing.
So there's that was a huge, the matriarch power of continued learning is big in my family, which I'm so grateful for. It's so special.
Did she do something with this degree that she then received?
So that's the great question, because my mom has a thing that she has a block that keeps her from bringing things to fruition.
That sounds familiar.
Yes, it's really, and we've been talking about it so much lately, she and I, because I think if I look through it through kind of my North American cultured perspective about success and what it means to do, then I can actually see it through more of a negative lens. But if I actually open my brain, which I've been working a lot on with her and listening and seeing her for who she is, she's just someone that has a lot of interests and is not really attached to being something. She's much more into just like being herself and following threads and learning. And this idea of completion or where it takes you to the next level is really just one character type, so it doesn't totally match her. Like she wrote a few books and didn't get them published. She could have been an incredible children's author. She didn't like follow the thread all the way. And it's another place where I'm changing my view on, rather than judging her, thinking that there's something wrong, so to speak, but more to be like, okay, this is just who you are in this lifetime. She's relational, and anyone that finishes a conversation with her would say that was the most present conversation I've ever experienced, because my mom makes you feel like the most important person in the world when you're talking to her. And I think that's what she's meant to do in this lifetime.
This
be
is
connected.
So inspiring for me, because I do suffer from that a little bit as well. And I'm extremely curious. And the moment I feel like I own the topic, I'm ready to drop it, without like her, without some kind of a crowning or finishing or degree or something. And I do have bad conscience about it. And I often have this internal dialogue of exactly what you said, trying to forgive myself and accept myself and say, maybe that's all that it needs to be, you know, maybe all the unfinished manuscripts and ideas that I have in my computer in my drawers, maybe that's enough for this lifetime. I don't know.
I think you do know. I love the way you just said that, because when I just heard you say that, it sounded like you're giving yourself permission to actually be what you are in this moment. And it's not like you're sitting around eating bonbons. You're learning, you're engaging with people. You're doing so many things. You have a podcast. You're doing incredible work in the world.
Some things are finished. I managed to finish. And then I tell myself so many things did come to fruition. So it's okay if some didn't.
Exactly. I think it's just really expansive when we start to see people in a different way without being stuck in kind of the expectations that our culture puts on people.
Absolutely.
So that's
her. Absolutely. How's she doing now? Is she busy?
She's great. I mean, I would say COVID kind of slowed her down a little bit in being busy, and she misses being busy. But I mean, she is busy. She's always going on walks and reading a new book and studying something. And, you know, she keeps herself very busy. She's doing great. She's 77 now, and she's slowing down. I can feel her energy is slower. But she was just out here. And again, she's so present. And that's really her superpower. And she's good. She has COVID right now, though.
Oh, no.
She got it from me.
Oh, no. I hope she's okay. Is she having it as bad as you did?
I don't think it's as bad as me, but she's tired, and I know I feel awful for her right now.
I'm sending her my thoughts.
Thank you. I love that collective healing energy.
Yes, collective healing energy. Let's learn from her.
Yes.
What do you feel are the most important things you've learned from her?
Okay, so there's a few that stand out. I would say one thing that she really did for me is she never, ever held me back. Meaning she always told me I could be and do whatever I wanted to be and do. And I didn't know any different. So I just figured that was what we're told. And it's the thing I learned the most of working so intimately with people is how often adults will put guardrails on people's journey because of fear. So some of this comes from privilege. I will 100% own that she was able to be like, yes, go to college. I mean, you know, I had the opportunity to go to college, right? So that puts me in a whole different category of opportunity. And so I don't take any of that for granted. But I didn't go to like a typical college. She supported me in changing my mind a lot, which I did. Like you, I get excited about something and then I change my mind. And so I went to a couple different colleges before I really figured out what I wanted to do. And I always worked. So I always had that kind of, I wasn't kind of just living off of, you know, their money. I always had a grounding anchor that kept me really focused. I moved across the country. I moved to Colorado when I was 18 years old. And she was like, yeah, go do it. Discover the world. Even though I knew that was something she never really did. It scared the hell out of her.
And it's far. It's far from New York City.
Yes, it's far. And it's also, I mean, I was like rock climbing and climbing big mountains to go snowboarding down and doing things that were so out of her comfort zone. And she never let her fear get in my way. And I am so grateful for that. So she believed in me. She let me make mistakes. She let me, you know, figure things out. She was not micromanaging me. You know, she did always have a voice in my ear that said, you need to, at some point, have your own health insurance, a job that gives you your own health insurance. You need to be self-supportive by this age. You know, there was very clear boundaries of how to stay on track, so to speak. But so I would say one of the biggest lessons was she really let me fly. And I'm so grateful for that. I mean, there was a time where I was dressing like, I was such a hippie with like patchwork clothes and petty skirts. hair everywhere. And she just like loved me through it. She's like, go do you. Meanwhile, she had like awesome New York fashion and I couldn't have been more different, but she didn't take it personally. So that's lesson number one.
Mm-hmm.
Lesson number two was that she really encouraged me to explore my sexuality in a really beautiful, non-cringy way. I would say it was subtle. I mean, I knew that she had lost her virginity to my dad, and that was really her first love, and they're still happily married, and I'm so grateful for that. And they were incredible models of health. And she was like, you need to go kiss a lot of frogs. That was kind of really good. She's like, go explore people, see what you like, see what you don't like. There was no like, must be a good girl vibe, you know? We didn't have that in my family.
Was she talking to you about sex or sexuality, about, I don't know, contraception, about health and all these things? Or did she just gently support you in exploring?
Somewhere in the middle. Okay. She was gently supporting, and there was conversation. I don't remember like explicit sex positive language, but there was definitely a sex positive message in my home. So something was there, but it's not like we would sit around and talk about the power of an orgasm. You know, and but somewhere along the way, I learned that it was okay to be sexually expressive as a woman, and not have shame around that.
I so rarely hear that. You know, this is one of the things women always answer as something they wish they learned from their moms and were able to talk to their moms about.
It is the number one theme I hear as well. Yeah. And so sexuality has been a huge part of my work too, because I am so determined to create a shame-free culture around being a sexual being and pleasure and desires. And with that comes empowerment and boundaries and the power to change your mind and how to have a voice and really be skilled in your language to speak your truth, no matter what that is. And so somewhere along the way, I didn't learn that part from her. I didn't learn strong boundaries from her. So I know this is a question at the end of what I didn't learn. And this is one part of that. I had to learn that on my own. And so I don't blame her for that, but I just know that was not something that was really, really enforced in my life. And I just had to figure that one out. Yeah.
But before we
before
we jump to that, do you have other lessons that you have learned?
Yeah, I would say the third lesson that really stuck with me is, and this kind of goes on the heels of just being who you are. She really taught me how to kind of honor my emotions and not be afraid of them.
Oh, wow. I never had that one.
Yeah. Oh, good. And yeah, I was one of those typical kids that was told I was too sensitive my whole life. And she really taught me that my sensitivity was my superpower. You know, that was not the messaging I received from really anyone else in my life. I guess I feel like she was never scared of my big emotions when I was a teenager, when I would just like cry for no reason and, you know, or I couldn't find the perfect outfit and have a total meltdown, which every teenager has in some version, you know, especially girls and those who identify as girls. And she would sometimes get frustrated if we had to go somewhere and she was like, you have to pick an outfit, you know, but I just remember there was a lot of room and space to be emotional. And when there was room for that, I didn't get stuck in it. So I would move through emotional cycles pretty quickly. And that really has stayed in my system of like, it's okay to be emotional, like be big, take up space, and then regulate, and then bring it in and function. Don't get stuck there, but you have to like let that out. You have to feel it. You know, it sounds so obvious, but to really embody that, I think, is what I learned from her.
Oh, what a beautiful lesson. Ah.
Yeah, I feel really grateful.
Yeah, I'm thinking a lot about it because I'm a very emotional person, and I'm trying to learn not to not react emotionally. To
Yes.
recognize where there's space for emotions and where there's no room for emotions.
Yes, that's wise, very wise.
And it's a very interesting lesson. And when I apply it successfully, I'm so proud of myself.
Yes, you should be. And it's like, and you're right. It's so hard to catch it kind of in the moment.
Yes.
And you said something so powerful, like to know the moments where it's okay and when it's not. Right? Like that's really profound, because that means that your logical brain is still online to be able to have that observing role. And we know that when that part of the brain just shuts off, then there's sort of, it's hard to come back. And so what I think I hear you saying is you're able to kind of play with both at times, like emotion and logic.
I'm gently approaching that level at the age of 49. It took me 49 years, but hey, slowly. We're working on it.
We're working on it. Every day is different, right?
Yeah. Do you have more lessons, or should we jump into what you didn't learn from her and what you wish you learned?
Yeah, let's jump in. I do.
You talked about boundaries already. Do you want to elaborate on that, or is there more?
I think because my mom didn't have a lot of dating experience before my dad, she didn't have the felt experience of when a relationship, when it's time to leave. And so this is only her lack of experience, but I couldn't relate to her on this. And she didn't always know how to guide me there, And so I remember going through heartbreak and feeling like she really didn't understand what real heartbreak felt like in that way. And I think she would try to understand, but again, that was just a limitation of her journey, So it wasn't that she misguided me. It was just a place that she wasn't that for me. I had to seek that elsewhere. And that's when I found a great therapist and, found other like elders in my life that could, because I think that's really important too, that we can't expect to get it all from our mom. Right. So like the village mentality is really essential. And although I didn't grow up in a village, so to speak, I didn't have a family close by. I had to learn how to create village. So that was a big one. And I think it took her a long time to really have a strong voice with my dad when he had his temper and stuff. And I remember it coming out like later in life, and now she feels very much in her power. But I feel like that she was learning that kind of while I was learning that. So that's big, and the other thing I would say that I didn't learn from her was risk taking. She played it safe, in many parts of her life. And I think that was also a product of her generation. And her mother was very fearful. So she really had to overcome her mother's projections. Sorry. Yeah. Like exactly. Like her mother was scared of like ice on the ground. She was like, don't go outside. It's too icy, and that she survived the depression, and, she has her own stories that came in around fear. Yeah. So my mom really like evolved through her mother's fear. But I think that it sort of contradicts my mom that I said earlier, that my mom was like, go fly your wings, like spread your wings, go fly, child.
But it's one thing to say things and the other thing to model them. So these are two different things.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So I don't think she really taught me to like, just like go out and see what happens in a physical way.
Yeah. But then you did.
So, I did.
Yes,
I did. And I got a lot of that from my dad too. He was always kind of pushing the risks. And so I'm grateful for that balance. Gosh, what else with my mom? I know it's so funny. I feel like I'm seeing her through such a rose colored lens right now, but I just have so much appreciation for her. Especially as she's aging. And I just really accept her. Yeah. Sorry, go.
And I love it how you mentioned that you watched her grow. The thing about her voice is it's beautiful to watch out, to be able to watch, and it's beautiful to have moms who develop at any stage and age of life, and we can witness that.
Yes, that is.
Yeah.
I agree, because it's. I think once you stop learning, you start really aging.
Yeah.
In a different way, in a negative way. You know, I mean, age is such a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
And like the part of age that we kind of don't like is when we stop learning. So yeah, I think that really are the big ones that stand out for me.
Deb, thank you so much. This was really very inspiring.
Yay, thank you.
Yes.
It's so wonderful. I love talking to you, and I love your curiosity. It's so authentic. Like you just have this deep wanting to know. And I think every time I talk to you, I walk away with that, and it totally fills me up. So I think it's your biggest superpower. And I think you're doing such good work in the world. So thank you, Anna.
Oh, thank you for saying this. I'm going to write it down because I was not aware of that, that this was my superpower.
Please do. Please do. It's so deep in you. It's like you can just feel it. So yes, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you again for being my guest and sharing Mama Lois with us.
And I'll say one thing is I do a lot of in-person workshops, but I also do virtual 2-hour deep dives on specifically coming up on conscious listening, sexuality, and counter will, which is understanding the rebellious piece of adolescence. And so that's something that some of your national or worldwide listeners might be able, if they're curious and want to learn. Those are 3 really important topics around raising adolescents. So it's for moms of daughters and those who identify as daughters that are 11 to 16. That's the window.
And they will find everything on the website.
That's correct.
Fantastic. Yeah. Deb, thank you again. This was beautiful.
Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.
You too. If you enjoy Thank You Mama and want to help it grow, please take the 2 seconds to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. If you'd like to get in touch, you can send me a mail at info@thankyoumama.net. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Anna Tajder. That's Tajder. This was Thank You Mama. Come back next week, subscribe, and tell your friends.